guys bought the textbooks that I required. If you went to the website, there's several texts that I asked you to bring. I don't see anybody has them, so maybe you didn't get the email. But we will be learning about the kerning and leading within large bodies of research and referential texts tonight, with a key focus on civil procedure reference materials for studies in law. And that's until 2 a.m. tonight. We're locking the doors, so if you have to use the bathroom, you can, but if you don't have to use the bathroom, you're going to want to. So if we could get started, I don't know, I'm going to call randomly on somebody to call out the differences between the 5,000th tracking and kerning within these bodies of text. I'll put the cursor somewhere, so nobody? No? Okay, that's a joke. So that was my first presentation as a joke slide. I was just warming up the crowd, but it didn't work out so good. But for reals, this is a talk about motivational nihilism. Now I can't see anybody out there, and it feels like a weird dream, but that's okay. Make sure I have my Gatorade. So I'm Nim Ben-Reuven, and I don't know how many people out there know me or don't know me, but that's okay. I do a lot of hand lettering stuff, and I also do other things as well that range in the world of graphic design and art direction and video production. But one of the main things that I'll be talking about here is lettering pieces that I did that have to do with kind of a philosophical ideology that I've been trying to bring together in my head over the years. So I totally forgot what the next slide is, but, oh, okay. So my credentials. Let's talk about me. I don't have a good resume. I haven't worked in that many places. I've been freelancing for 8 years now in the graphic design field. I don't know how many out there are graphic designers, since I can see this. That's a lot. And then how many people don't give a shit about graphic design, because that's okay. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Boom. 4. All right. That's cool. So it's fine, because I have a weak resume in graphic design. It's okay. I also have a very unimpressive client list. Sometimes, I don't know how many people have done this, but you sit in on a meeting, maybe you're taking notes or you're getting coffee if there's a Google representative, and you go to your resume that day and you're like, worked for Google, or did a job for so-and-so. I like to do that a lot with my resume, but when I don't do it, it's pretty unimpressive. I have 1 award, which happened recently. Thank you very much. Thank you, Type Directors Club. Appreciate it. I don't have a good work ethic. I tend to keep normal hours, and I don't like to spend more than 8 or so hours a day working on anything, and then maybe 2 days a week of that 8 hours. So that sucks for them. I don't have a blog about dating, so I'm not famous. So apparently nobody cares about me. That's fine, I don't care. But I go on dates sometimes, maybe. But I don't blog about it, so I'm not famous yet, but one day. And I've never given a talk before, so that's why you guys are here as little experimental people. I really appreciate that. So I'm glad everybody's here. It's a lot more people than I expected, and I'll give you all your checks later for coming here. That said, I want to preface this talk with the fact that I am a designer living in the graphic design world, and I'm going to talk about philosophies here, but whatever it is that I'm saying here is just thoughts and opinions. I don't consider myself somebody worthy giving life advice to anybody, although some of these thoughts are about life and advice. I think that somebody in my position who does this, on a regular basis when I'm working for a studio, doesn't really have that much world experience, and there's a huge influx of young designers out there today that are giving everybody life advice through motivational pieces, because of course designers have been through everything. But I just want to counter that and say, no, I really haven't been through that much in this world, and there are people out there that are doing a lot more, world-heavy stuff that are changing things, everybody in this picture. I don't know who these people are, but every single one of them has more life experience than most designers. I'm just going to put that out there. So just take everything that you see here as like, tongue-in-cheek, and some of it may be very terrible advice. And then you'll see some of these pieces that I did, because sometimes I draw out these things. Anyway, that was a mouthful. Let me take my phone out so I make sure I'm doing things in a correct, timely manner. So this is like, I don't know, I started hashtagging things because that's what kids do these days, they hashtag things on Instagram. I was making these motivational pieces that were not motivational at all, and I wanted to kind of show that there was something a little different about what I was doing. And then when I was asked to give a talk, I figured I might as well talk about that stuff, but I had no idea what it is that I was actually trying to convey with my stuff. So part of me was like, all right, what do I talk about motivational nihilism? I'll just go for the most straightforward route and say it's just a mix between this asshole on the left with one of those little microphones and talks to a bunch of suckers in a room about like 3 steps to success, and everybody pays him money and nobody becomes successful. But he's still very motivational. And then the guy on the right who's just scornful of everything in the world, that's Nietzsche, by the way. And so like a mix of like happy-go-lucky stuff, but then at the same time he brings it right down with like everything is terrible, you're all gonna die, and it doesn't matter at all. So that's the initial combination. But then I thought that was maybe a little too like, there were 2 extremes, and they didn't really kind of come together well enough to describe what it is that I wanted to do. So I wanted to take something that was a little more topical. So I wanted to talk about these 2 guys. Some of you may have seen this show. Everybody knows what it is. It's called Cop Buddies. Some of you haven't. For those of you who haven't seen the show, it's called Cop Buddies. It's about 2 guys who are trying to solve like a series of creepy murders. And one of the guys who's on the left there, that's Woody Harrelson, he's like kind of the super cop guy. He's kind of like this golden boy, but his life is really a mess. But he's so superficial about stuff. He just like comes off as a good Christian, a good cop. He does everything by the book. But he's just like, there's something that he's not showing the world, and it's kind of hindering him from kind of seeing things in a different light. Whereas the guy on the right, his life is a complete and utter mess, yet he wears it on his sleeve, and he kind of uses that mess to help him move towards like whatever goal he's trying to achieve, which is to solve this murder. They're both trying to solve the murder, but one of them is actually tapping into his like dark, deep problems and letting them kind of out, so it kind of helps them get there. And maybe it's not so much about the murder, but it's just like about life in general and how like people approach life. This particular episode was awesome. It was called The Case of the Missing Crawfish. And they found the crawfish. They're right there in the bowl. It was great. You should check it out. Some of you hate this show. Some of you like it. But it's the characters that I found were really interesting. And they had this like mix of motivation yet complete nihilism about what the end goal would actually achieve. Like whether catching this criminal would do anything to better the world. So they mentioned that some Nietzsche stuff in there, time is a flat circle. I like to draw things out from time to time. But this is a really confusing concept for me, but I like to think about it anyway, this idea that all of our lives are kind of this circle of constant happening, like we're constantly being born, constantly experiencing everything we've always experienced and everything we will always experience at the same time, but we just don't know it. And that's really weird, and maybe that's not even right, but I like this idea, but also it makes me think of all the things that I feel like I've experienced before are happening constantly, these patterns of repetitiveness and regurgitation almost. And that leads me to what made me want to do lettering stuff. So let's talk about the bombardment, this flat circle of stuff that kind of is always out there and has always been out there, but kind of just changes its face from time to time. And if anybody gets like bored or cranky, feel free to fall asleep because I can't see your faces at all. It's fine. Anyway, so I did a Google search of motivational hand lettering, and this stuff came up. And there's a lot of it. Everybody loves hand lettering these days, which is great on one hand, and it's pretty weird on the other hand because so much of it is about how amazing the world is and how great it is, and you should never give up because everything's going to be great. And these are all usually people from this country talking about this stuff who, have pretty okay jobs, or they're like in high school, or they're just like they haven't been battered down by anything yet. And that's great. That's like fine. But there's probably 6 or 7 billion people in this world that have been battered down by the world that we kind of think is the only thing that exists. But there's just like a lot of this stuff out there. And it kind of was making me feel weird. And then I did another Google search, and it's like this whole idea of hustling. Everybody likes to hustle hard and likes to draw about it, and everybody's kind of like drawing the same thing over and over again. And there's like a million things you could write out, maybe like an infinite amount of letter combinations that people could do. But for some reason, they choose like the 10 that happen to get the most likes on Instagram. And then when I was looking at my presentation, right before I put it together, I realized that 2 of my pieces were in that Google search. But I'm glad you guys didn't realize that, so we'll change those like that never happened. Thank you, Photoshop, for making things cool. So then this stuff started happening, which it's beautiful. I don't know. You guys see these like indie magazines come out, which I think is great because print is having this like resurgence that, you know, we all thought it was going to be dead 5 years ago and that we'd all be like reading tablets and shit. But all of a sudden, all these indie magazines popped up and people were buying them like crazy, and there's a lot of money put into them. And it's like the world is our oyster. It's like this death grip of like the world is releasing and the magazines can now do whatever they want. Yet for some reason, they're all doing the same thing. Every single last one of these boutique magazines is the same thing. And I was like, wait, did I just see this before? Wait, was this that magazine? Or was Travel Almanac Inventory? Or was Inventory Fantastic Man? It's all this like muted colors and these pastel people and this like kind of filtered lifestyle that doesn't really exist anywhere except in the mind of whichever designer started this, which it looked great. I mean, I love looking at this, but at the same time, it's like, wait, what is this saying? It's like, what are they talking about? I don't know what any of these magazines are about except for pastel, and that's it. And what is this person holding? We'll talk about that later. Anyway, then there's these guys. This was another thing that was kind of bugging me. Because all of a sudden, everywhere I was looking in the design world, these same people kept popping up. And this same lens flare on the sunset was popping up, and they were having such a good time. Oh my God, look at this guy, he's amazing. He's got a camera too, and it's old school. It's not even his phone. Where is he going? It could be anywhere. Just follow your dreams to wherever you want to go. So these people, they all look great, but what are they actually doing? And why are they everywhere all of a sudden? And why is every client asking to have these people as like the lifestyle, like standard for what they want to show, whether it's like a bank or it's like a boutique that sells, I don't know, rusty nails or whatever. So on one hand, I think it's like, that's fine. But on the other hand, I'm like, wait a minute, we were doing this in like the 90s and the 2000s. It's just different people and different lenses. And I feel like when this kind of stuff 10 years later looks like the worst thing ever, I think we're going to look back at those lens flares and nice looking people 10 years from now and be like, what were we thinking? Because what are they actually doing? We don't know. They could be selling anything. And there's no like substance behind what's going on there. It just looks great. And I'm sure these people looked great back when whatever designer was taking the photo because there was no, other standard. And anyway, let's slow down for a little bit. Let's talk about me. So this is me, 1980. That dates me a bit. I'm drinking a 40 ounce. I'm 2 years old. I'm 37 years old now, just to clear the air. I'm not a young designer anymore, but I'm not that successful still, so it's okay. So I was drinking stuff. I liked to hit the bottle pretty hard. My parents are behind me. You can see their leg there, but they don't care. They were pretty cool. They came from Israel in the 70s. They were super hippies. They would just give me a bottle of whatever they weren't drinking and let me finish it off. So 30 years later, that's me graduating from Pratt Institute. I went to grad school there for communications design. And between me being that little kid and me being this guy here, doesn't really matter because it's fine. Everybody's got a life story and they're all kind of the same, with little bits and pieces that kind of pop out. But anyway, none of that is relevant to what's happening here. this is me after 2.5 years of grad school, wondering what the hell I just did with myself and why I'm destroying my thesis and thinking if I'm ever gonna, get work ever again. So what I did with my thesis, because everybody's so interested in my thesis, but this is like the only time I ever get to talk about it. It started like this. This has to do with some cardboard, which I'll come to later, because cardboard is a lot of what I do now. I wanted to kind of show how the grad school program that I was in, and also higher education as a whole, was kind of treating its students as expendable future workers that were kind of, interchangeable to large companies without much thought to it. So they're creating a bunch of kind of robots that were very expendable, just had like enough skills to get by, but then also, once they got too old, they could be shoveled out for other younger designers. And I was totally not into that. I was like, no, this is a place to do crazy stuff. This is awesome. And I'm sure some of you were Pratt with me too, who had the same ideas. So it was a little stifling, but they were changing. Anyway, I wanted to show that with this little tiny cardboard piece. That's my thesis. Just kidding. I built it into an airline terminal made out of cardboard inside of the main lobby at the Pratt grad school. This is it kind of being built. I wanted to show how higher education was this like kind of airline terminal where people just sit there and they don't do anything for 2.5 years. They just wait for their flight to come in, whether it's like a job or an internship, and then they just leave. And they have to follow all these rules because there's securities everywhere. Everybody's making sure they do stuff, and they have to put their stuff through the X-ray machines and make sure they're not carrying any weird design materials that could be subversive. And it felt very controlled. So I was like, this is the best juxtaposition ever. And then people would walk through this little motion detector, and they would be called non-threats to the status quo. And I thought that was awesome because they would walk through it, and a light would go on. And I was like, this is going to be me. After I graduate, New York is going to thank me because I'm so smart and I'm thinking about stuff. And of course, it fell flat for the most part. It was fun to build it, but I did it so quickly, and I was so interested in the building aspect that I didn't really think about what I was saying. And it didn't quite, reach the level that I thought it would reach as far as people talking about it, because I think the 3-4 people here who went to Pratt are the only people that ever talk about it because I talk about it to them. So thanks, guys. So what really happened after I graduated was something more like this. I felt like maybe I said some things that made the administration a little pissed off with me or something, or maybe I spent too much time working on an installation piece when I should have been working on branding projects, but I was like, oh, nobody wants to be with me. So I spent about 1.5 years not working for anybody for more than a couple days, even if I got a job. I went, did a bunch of interviews, threw my portfolio out there, nothing. Everybody just critiqued my portfolio. Had a nice meeting with Stefan Sagmeister, thank you very much, met him, nice. He said, I don't like things that look like other things, so your terminal doesn't make sense to me. It's fine. I learned a lot of stuff. But at the time, I felt like New York was just out to get me. It's a good movie, by the way. It's very scary, 28 Days Later. Anyway, it did lead to me building cardboard things, but that comes later. So I was pretty defeated by the design world. I was really just like, this isn't working out. I spent a lot of money on this school, and nobody really wants to do the stuff that I want to do, so this sucks. How do I bring myself up out of it? What do I do? Oh, I gotta hustle hard. I gotta do anything. I really gotta hustle because everybody's talking about hustling, right? It's what you gotta do as a designer, right? So I started thinking about this hustling thing. And originally hustling hard, this is for sports people. It's the whole idea is doing more work so you can be better, so you can, get more glory and you can win the games. And it's all about this competitive edge that, hustling is good for. And then there's these people which all of a sudden co-opted that hustling and are like, no, we're going to hustle hard in our industry too. We're going to just be like sports people, but we're going to do the same, and it's going to be awesome. And then I was like looking at the facts, and when you hustle in the sports, your skill level goes up, your payment level goes up, and your glory goes up. It's all guaranteed. The more you practice, the better you get, on and on. In the design industry, you hustle harder, and then nothing is guaranteed. In fact, there's very, very little guarantee that anything will come of your hustling, except, I don't know, lose some sleep at night. There's some people that might get their stuff seen, but skill level, payment, glory, I don't know if anybody thinks that they're guaranteed any of that in design if they do work hard. I know I don't, but I'll leave that up to you later. So anyway, the guy that makes the money, that's this guy. So we're hustling hard as designers and letterers and whatever, and this guy's making the money, or whoever's sitting in that chair with those suspenders. Could be a lady, could be a guy, but it's not us. So the only guarantee is this person is making more money on how much we hustle hard. No guarantee for us, but this guy, everything's cool. So the main question I was asking myself at the time was, why am I doing what I'm doing, and who am I doing it for? If I do work hard, if I do, constantly, overreach and kind of set standards to a different level, what is like the end goal, and who am I helping reach this end goal with through my hustling? And that's kind of like the question that I felt not too many people were asking in the industry. So what I do is I end up just making these doodles that kind of counteract those things for myself. It kind of helps me kind of meditate on what I'm thinking. So I think it's like hustling soft is a little better than hustling hard, because you're kind of like tentative. You're doing the work, but you're like standing back from time to time. It's like, yeah, I'm not gonna like put everything into this because I don't know yet what it's all about. So you hustle soft and you work soft. And it's like this whole idea. It's like, I think a guy named Nicholas Nassim Taleb, who's an interesting philosopher, he wrote a book called Anti-Fragile. You guys should check that out. But his idea of like working smarter, there's a lot of like this idea of working smarter is better than working harder, but I think the working smarter also needs a little bit of a softer edge to it, which is like you're honing your work skills, but at the same time you're leaving yourself open to understanding what that work is that you're doing around and what its effects are to yourself and those around you. So you work soft and you hustle softer. And yeah, just don't work so hard all the time. Unless you really, really love working hard and it's great to lose sleep over stuff, that's fine. So I like to draw stuff like this, and then people comment on my stuff and they're like, what are you talking about? You're never going to get anything done if you don't work hard. I guess it's true. Here I am. But no, sometimes it works. Here's another thing that was bugging me at the time. It's like, we all have dreams and we're all kind of being told to follow them because everything's going to work out as long as you keep following your dreams, and that's great. And yeah, they just keep regurgitating that same thing over and over again. But at the same time, what are these dreams that we're following? And are we following our own dreams, or are we following somebody else's dreams? And so right when I was like finished with grad school, I was wondering what this meant, because I had a lot of dreams, but none of my dreams matched up with any of these things, ever. Maybe I would buy something from one of them from time to time, but at no point did any of my dreams have the same, level of whatever any of these companies want as far as their dreams, I think. And I'm pretty sure Coca-Cola's dreams are not my dreams. But I don't know. I haven't slept with Coca-Cola, but maybe tonight. Coca-Cola? Anybody representing? No? That's fine. So yeah, there's all these big names that kind of are out there tempting us to follow our dreams within their constraints of what they can provide for us as far as money. And we all kind of need money to get going. But at what point do we step back and realize what our dreams are doing for these companies, what our work is doing for these actual companies? And so I made a diagram, which maybe will make sense, maybe won't. But anyway, I feel like we have our dreams all of a sudden, and then we go and we work as a designer. We go into a design firm, and we sit in this little bubble circle, and we sit with the client, and then we make something, and it's all awesome, and we have this end product, but all of it kind of remains in this little bubble, and nothing kind of permeates outside of the bubble. We don't like experience that much of what's outside of the bubble, which is everybody else, essentially, besides designers and clients and their end products. And I feel like a lot of the dreams that we had once remain on the everyone else side, and we're kind of like stuck in this little bubble when we design stuff. I don't know, some people might feel like that, some people don't, but this is especially for like large corporations or even small ones that aren't doing exactly what we love to do. But anyway, I feel like when this bubble is so self-contained with just everybody else outside of it, all sorts of things get made, and it might be beautiful, and it might be interesting and technologically awesome, but then this happens. You get this kind of shit that, you know, floods the market as far as like what they think we need and what like designers and marketers and clients think that the public needs, and then everybody hops on and is like, oh my God, everybody, yeah, let's do Google Glass. This is Google Glass, by the way, thanks Google, if anybody's here representing, sorry. Anyway, this fell flat pretty much. Everybody thought this was gonna be like the next big thing, I don't know, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. It's kind of like the segue to me. I don't think it will take off. You can quote me, I'm being recorded. But it just didn't connect with people. People didn't need something like this, and I felt like it was built in a bubble of people being like, oh my God, this is our dream to create this thing, and it's gonna be awesome, but it's actually something that helps the corporation, you know, spread whatever the corporation is doing rather than actual people's needs. So, I don't know, maybe it's cool, maybe it's not. I've taken jobs for things that I didn't quite think was like up my alley, but sometimes it's okay to feel like you're selling out, but for me, I think it helped to be a little more self-aware at like what I was doing when I was doing it. And then I hope that, you know, if any of you ever have the moment where you're like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing this for money? You can step back and be like, maybe I am doing it for money, but I'm like more aware of how I'm doing this thing. Or you can just not be aware, and actually life is a lot better when you're ignorant of a lot of things. So who am I to say? It makes things depressing when you're more aware. But still, the end product might be a little richer if the people are more aware at what they're doing, even if they are selling out. It's cool. Selling out is okay. And if you do it with somebody, it's even better. So speaking of selling out, which it's not really a sellout, but there's me with some of my friends. Let's see. I was asked to help make a beer commercial, and the friend of mine, who's a gentleman who's looking really bored with his hand on his face and the hat there, he's a musician named Sun Little, and he's amazing. You guys should get his album because he's awesome. Anyway, he had like a pairing with Lagunitas Beer, and they asked him to do some like little commercials for him. I don't drink beer. I've never drank beer, but I was like, maybe I can do something that I know nothing about. And I thought, we had like all these ideas of like doing stuff with beer. And then I was like, wait a minute, I know nothing about beer, so I'm going to make a commercial that I know nothing about that makes no sense whatsoever. And I'm going to try and play it right now because I've never shown it because, of course, it was declined and it never went anywhere. But I'm going to plug in something that's going to make a little noise. No noise. We'll see if this works in the end. Anyway, so they didn't take it, of course, but that's okay. Somebody in the crowd here today, Abby somewhere, she filmed this, and that was very nice of her to do it for free, because everybody should work for free for their friends all the time.
Real people? Us two versus YouTube? Us two YouTube. Us two YouTube. Us two YouTube. Okay, YouTube. You got this? YouTube us two? No, not us two. No. Us two YouTube. Real people. Alright, still, real people. That's not real people. Damn it, Sun Little, we're on the same team.
That's a beer commercial. Yeah, they didn't take it. That's cool though. I felt like I was doing something I had no idea, I had no background doing. It was real fun to do, but I also wanted to make sure I wasn't trying to like pretend like I knew what it was like to drink Lagunitas delicious beer. They're paying me $5 to show this right now. Thank you, Lagunitas. But yeah, if you feel like maybe you're doing something that isn't what you want to be doing, I would say just try to like do some crazy ass shit with it and see what happens, and then it'll kind of send a message from time to time. But those people are really nice at Lagunitas. They didn't yell at me. Let's see if I can go to the next slide. Whoop. Sorry, you have to look at this dog. Whoop. Nope, it's not going. Nope, don't play again, please. The next slide is really cool. Oh, there it is. Oh, God. What do? Is it a virus? Later. Yeah, so sometimes you wonder what's the point of all this? And am I really doing what I want to be doing? And if you have fun, yes, that's a good point to be doing things. Anyway, here's another thing. Let's keep moving. Good vibes only. This is like one of the most sinister things I think of is like permeating the world right now. I don't know where it came from. It has like something to do with like some island vibe or like beachfront living. But to me, good vibes only is like what's bringing this country down. It's this idea that everything is great and I don't want to hear it if it's not great. And if you're not having good vibes, then get out of my design firm. Don't want to see it. I don't want to hear. I don't want anybody arguing. I don't want anybody saying anything negative. I want everybody to love me. So there's a lot of hand lettering that said good vibes only. I don't want to show you because it's gross and I feel like it permeates us somehow with good vibes. Yeah, good vibes I think they're great for a little bit, but when you say good vibes only, it is like completely discounting everything else in the world that might not be what you want it to be, which is great if you're a cult leader and you want everybody who looks the same surrounding you and saying yes to everything. And you may like say that everybody can be unique, but if you only have good vibes, you can be unique, and you're not allowed to have a conversation about anything. Anyway, that bugged me. I felt like all those good vibes were kind of like this Emperor's New Clothes type situation where everything was great, but everything wasn't great, except nobody would see it because everybody's like trying to like perpetuate these good vibes. So I'm like, this is messed up. Can't anybody see the craziness? And I was like, making no sense whatsoever talking about it. But still, I feel like having constant good vibes surrounding everybody at all times will destroy your mind and won't allow for any type of growth whatsoever. So I say bad vibes only for a little bit. If you want to bring it in, that's fine. But yeah, the whole like good vibes thing, just don't do it so much. If you want to do it, it's fine, but don't do it. Don't. Bad vibes. Bring in some bad vibes. I think bad vibes help to balance situations. They help to like bring in conversation starters or actually like help people understand why they want certain good vibes and see like other ends of the spectrum. Because in all of our lives, nothing is ever constantly good. We have really, really horrible moments, and they need to be addressed and known that it's okay to have those horrible moments, rather than like if you're having a horrible moment, then there's something wrong with you, terribly wrong with you. So let's move on to something else, which I don't like as much, but it's still something interesting. It's this notion of authenticity, but it's completely made up. It's this idea that everything around us is real, but it's only real when you see it in your phone or in a magazine or on a video or something, and it's nasty. And it's stuff like this that I showed earlier. It's like, people walking off into sunsets because this is everybody's life constantly, not just this person's life. We're all experiencing that in New York constantly or in any other country. And when people I hope the person who made this isn't in this room. If you are, thanks for giving me stuff to make fun of. This idea of you got all your cool stuff and you surround yourself with it, and you put it in this crazy great order, and then you say something, but none of it actually makes sense. None of any of these items has anything to do with like anybody's life today. And maybe it's the life of somebody who's like pretending it is, but it's not. I don't think it's any of our lives here. I don't know. Do you guys have any of these things in your pockets right now? Maybe the pen, but the glasses, old-timey camera that doesn't work, that's there for some reason. What else? You got like a leather pouch with gold nuggets in it, probably, on the left. And of course, you have to have a coffee cup because otherwise you're a fool. And anyway, you don't got something nice to say, you should take it to the grave with you. That again, that's creepy to me. It's like, you got to kind of mix it up a little bit. Anyway, this got like 25,000 likes on Instagram by the person who posted it. So a lot of people like it. And then there's stuff like this. I don't understand it at all. But it looks nice. It still looks pretty. But this is all stuff that kind of I'm looking at when I think about my philosophy of like how I view life and how like things around us are kind of worming their way into our brains and kind of like telling us what life is supposed to be like, but not really saying that, but they're implying it quietly. Like if you're not having breakfast like this, then there's something terribly wrong with you. Or it's just like something that is so out of reach for so many people, but yet it seems like the most natural thing in the world. Like, you know, a client might want like to ask for something that's like, I want something that's like looks like has a maker feel and it feels like, you know, welcoming and down home and, you know, everybody can relate to. And this is usually what comes up. But I don't know anybody who's ever had this kind of breakfast, you know, maybe once in their life. But this is like a lifestyle that requires a lot of money. It requires like the ability to have that, you know, $10,000 reclaimed wood table and those floors. Oh my God, that's another story whatsoever. And yeah, all that food for breakfast, delicious. Anyway, I'm looking at this stuff and it riles me up because this is very few people's actual lives. Yet, as we're seeing these and as we're being inundated with these images, we kind of mold our lives to like, well, why can't my morning cappuccino and poached egg be more like this with like the crumbles around it? Even though I can't do that, my life kind of sucks now because I don't have any of this. I just have like Formica table and a plastic spoon or whatever. You know, probably most of the people in the world have never, you know, seen this spread ever. Yet we're kind of made to believe that this is what we're supposed to be seeing. And I think it's the same with like, you know, photoshopping women's bodies. You know, back when it was the craze to do that ever since magazines were around, and destroyed the, you know, self-worth of billions of young girls. I think this is kind of the same thing, but in a different way. It's kind of, it's more subtle, but at the same time, we are, you know, led to expect that certain things have to look like this eventually, or else we're doing something wrong with our lives. Just like those poor young ladies feel like they have to have Photoshop bodies. Yeah, here's another reclaimed thing. Like, I don't know, there's more money on that table than I think anybody I know has ever seen in their lifetime. Just in cameras, probably. Oh, but there's a little compass, too, if you look closely. That's important. Get your compasses. So I started making my little responses to these things, and they were just like silly little things, and I wanted to make them look like it, but then they weren't quite like that, and they kind of like had like a message that talks about it, like why are we putting coffee on everything that we're taking a picture of? So it was like beginning to get ridiculous to me, but hand lettering for me was just like a way to kind of meditate through the ridiculousness and find some humor in what we were doing, because I don't know, even by making this image, I'm kind of doing the same thing. And posting it on Instagram. But I don't know, I'll come to that when I have to face it with the rest of my demons. I noticed a lot of people were writing on saws. It's fun, it's cool to do, but I don't think too many people have used a saw in their lifetime. It's sad, but it's true. But I wanted to kind of like poke fun at the fact that so many people are like using this idea, this romanticized like ideal as something that we should be attaining, whereas there's no reason for us to even try to attain it because it doesn't make sense in our world. It's not part of our actual real life. So another thing and here's another video that I'll try to play, was this like idea of like the maker video, which they all look very beautiful. It's a new thing that's like been all the craze recently, where you're like, I want something that shows how beautiful like the leather workers, work is. And instead of just like showing what they do, it's like you have to have close-ups, you have to have like the particles in the sunlight coming in slow motion, and everything is like really slow and deliberate, and everything looks like it was, it's so absolutely contrived, but at the same time we wish that it was real. So somebody was asking me to show some videos of my hand lettering. And if any of you ever have the horrible time of watching me sit and hand letter for 4 hours, I'm sorry. It's the most boring thing, I assume, to watch somebody do something. So I wanted to post some videos on Instagram that kind of poked fun at myself. Anyway, they're really short because Instagram only lets me do 15 seconds of video, but I did a series of those things that just like everything goes wrong in the video and everybody expects everything to go right, and they'll learn like the secrets of hand lettering because it's full of secrets. And then there's like a select few masons that know all the secrets, but it's really not. But I feel like there's so many videos out there that claim that this like some esoteric thing. But really, it's just like you sit and you do your thing and you have a good time doing it, and it's kind of your thing, and it doesn't have to be a spectacle to the world. So like, it doesn't have to inspire other people. It just has to like make you feel good about what you're doing. And I feel like so much of what is coming out in the world is a spectacle. We think about our work. We think of us sometimes. I think of myself as a designer as like everybody's watching me, so why don't I do something like as a designer that everybody can watch? And I feel like that's a big thing with some young designers is like, putting themselves out there. It's like, here's a video of me experiencing the world as a designer and like learning stuff about the world. But we're just designers. It's okay to not have to use yourself as a spectacle of sorts, if that makes sense. Let's go back. Oh, there we go. So along those lines of kind of creating goofy videos about my hand lettering, I don't know, some of you may know these things, some of you may not. So as I was doing hand lettering, I was also realizing that I wasn't getting much like work doing hand lettering at the time, so I had a lot of free time. And what did I do with that free time? I decided to build a lot of things out of cardboard again, because that's what you do, right? You waste a lot of time. And this kind of stemmed from somebody asking me what my studio looked like. They wanted an idea of like, how do you do your work? I want to see all those like particles in the sunlight and the lens flare. And I want it to look really cool and awesome. And I was like, my life never looks like that. But what it does kind of look like is this guy. I just kind of wanted, I use cardboard a lot because it's out there and everybody's throwing it away, but it's also super versatile, and it's also the best metaphor for stuff because cardboard is like flimsy, it's a facade, it's like something that holds something together but not for very long. So, backtracking to my airline terminal thing, I wanted to show that, the school experience was very flimsy, and it was just kind of like a superficial buildup of corrugated material, which is my life too. So here's me working on a crap logo, because that's what I do. And I got a little kitten there, because it's cute. So I started making a whole bunch of stuff like this. And I was like, I got all this cardboard, what do I do? So I started making like photo, setups. This is my studio, this is me, and everybody's like, that's great, but where's your real studio picture? Because this isn't gonna work. And to this day, I have not given somebody a real picture of myself. Because, first of all, I don't like looking at photos of myself. And this guy looks a lot more interesting. So I was like, what can I do with this guy that's like even goes beyond this? Like, because people still were interested in my lettering stuff. So on Instagram, I started to make these other things, which I'll play for you right now. And again, you can fall asleep if it's boring, but if it's not, don't fall asleep. There it goes. Thanks for sitting through those. I like watching them. I hope you liked watching them. Thanks. Have lots of fun making those 15-second videos. And I don't do any of the work I'm supposed to be doing while I'm making them, which is great because sometimes I need that. And that the whole idea of making these videos about my life being not like this amazing, wonderful, like construed, authentic lifestyle, it leads back to this motivational nihilism thing, is that kind of interpreting the things that makes my life kind of shitty sometimes, or like the failures that I go through and the problems that I experience. I feel like all of that is incredibly helpful to like building what it is that I want to do down the line, or like putting more passion into my projects. And I feel like in so many places that I've experienced, there's no room for this kind of discussion of like, you know, what are we actually saying with what we're presenting to the world? Like when we're working on a branding for a client, what is it that we're selling to the world, and how will this affect people around us, and how will this product kind of, you know, shape the people in the world? And it's not like, you know, to the extent like what we're doing is going to change the world. This app is going to change the world. It's going to be a game changer. It's more like, what are you saying to the world around you by creating what you create? And for me, I just want to be sure that I'm saying something that I like believe in, and that I can trust myself to kind of, you know, understand the decisions that I make, and kind of put a little more self-awareness into those decisions, and take a step back from time to time and think about, you know, the good aspects, and then also like the darker side of things that the True Detective guys maybe helped them kind of deal with the world. So when I say like nothing matters and do like a little doodle drawing about that, what I'm really saying like to myself is that a lot of the bullshit out there doesn't really matter. And it's like a lot of this stuff that we're designing and this fluff that we're creating, it doesn't really matter. And to kind of be like more self-aware of the fact that it's not as heavy-hitting as a client would like to have it be. And maybe would open up the client a bit to like, you know, allow for, you know, better deadlines, or to kind of treat you in a way that wasn't like a little monkey designing stuff. Not that they do that, but I think there is a need. And going back to this whole idea of like the world being filled with expendable designers and what we're hustling for, do we really want to fill that market with like young minds that will work for anything, that will kind of like just do anything for no money whatsoever, just to be in a company, just to be in that design firm, and just to like, you know, promote some idea that we don't understand? And what are we saying to the world and to the people that like follow our footsteps, as this like, you know, regurgitation, this like never-ending feedback loop of like, oh, I gotta hustle and I gotta get paid $10 an hour for this job because the other person is gonna ask for $12. And oh wait, they're gonna ask for $8 now. And now really the only person that's benefiting is that person who runs that company. Nobody else is. Like, the consumers aren't benefiting, the workers aren't benefiting. It's just one person getting a lot of money. And for me, it helps to think about who's getting that money. Because money's important sometimes. But hopefully we won't find ourselves in this like hyper-capitalist world where 3 people have a lot of money. But we're kind of headed there. And I hope that it doesn't happen. But sometimes everything sucks. When I wake up and have that idea, I'm like, oh man, this is the worst. I'll make a doodle about it. And I'll put it on Instagram and my life will be better when I get more likes. So sometimes everything does suck, and it's okay to like throw it out there to the world. And then, last but not least, I didn't want to like get into my design work because this work isn't really anything that is crazy or fantastic, didn't win any awards, but I like to do design work still. But at the same time, I think if you're spending 16 hours working a day for a company that you don't really care about, why are we doing it? I sometimes ask myself that. But now everybody who's asleep, it's time to wake up. I'm so glad that all of you came here to watch me speak. I hope it wasn't too lame or boring because it's the first time I've ever spoken to a crowd that I can't see like this. Usually it's my dreams and I don't have any pants on, and this is really sexy, but this isn't sexy. But yeah, seriously, thank you to the TDC for letting me do this thing here. And I don't know if I'm supposed to field questions now.
Questions.
Okay, so some people are allowed to ask questions, and I can't see anybody right now, so no questions. Somebody has a question? Yeah, just shout them out.
The phone in your cardboard models?
Yes.
Is that like from the set of the X-Files, the original X-Files?
Oh, those like mobile, the cellular phone units. I was modeling it off of, I guess, something in that era because anything smaller would have not shown in the guy's hand. And doing an actual like rotary phone handle is round, and I can't do round. And cardboard is hard. It's hard to do round things. Yeah, does anybody else have any questions or angry comments or anything at all about what I showed or my philosophies? Or about the TDC. I can talk to you about Matteo Bologna's life.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's not an existential question. It's okay?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Sorry. Whoop. There we go.
Perfect. So, you do really everything by hand? How much do you cheat?
Everything that you saw here is by hand. Everything, I don't know how many people see my Instagram account, but everything that I post there is by hand. I very rarely vectorize or use Photoshop for that kind of stuff. I'll use it for like client work, but all the lettering stuff is straight up like a lot of pencil and a lot of erasing, but it's still hand stuff because that's the most fun for me.
And do you use French ruler or shit like that?
No, I don't for my like curvy things. For those of you interested in taking a workshop with me about making letters fancier, I don't use any curves or like ruler type things to make the curves because I feel like it blocks you into making the same curves that everybody else does. So it's just like it's more of a grid system that I set up with a pencil to make the curves. If that makes any sense. You could watch me for 5 hours as I do it.
That's great. So what are you going to teach at your class?
Oh, at my fancy lettering class that's coming up on March 11th. I don't know. I'm going to, it's for folks who kind of have their foot in the lettering world already. And I'm kind of going to go through with you guys as a whole and then one-on-one. I'm saying you guys, none of it's fine if you don't show up. But in general, my dream would be everybody here would show up. I'm going to like kind of show how to shape letters in a way that's like a lot more thoughtful and maybe kind of works shape-wise and like creating these flourishes and creating letters that as a whole kind of feel like a more cohesive thing rather than kind of just going, willy-nilly at making letters, which is fine, but I like making things really, really intensely nice for myself. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of focus on like a calligraphic, like old school, classic style, some Gothic stuff, but creating that lettering without having to use pens, kind of using your own like set of, set up grids of knowledge to kind of pencil things out and then make some beautiful pieces. But most importantly, I'm going to teach people not to write hustle hard on the pieces of paper and kind of create something that puts oneself a little bit beyond what is constantly inundating the market. So maybe you can get like noticed a little more when somebody Google searches hand lettering, so it doesn't look all the same. Does that make any sense? It sounds kind of boring.
Kind of. If you're a digital designer, would it help you?
It would help you get me paid, but I will go over like how to make the letters into like digital form somewhat. I'm not going to like inundate like vectorizing, but I'm going to show like the best practices, in my opinion, on how to kind of form your letters. So when you do digitize them, they go a lot smoother and they kind of work better if like, even if you're creating a font or just like a single piece. Because a lot of fonts that are out there, they look gorgeous, but they don't work that well, especially if it's like a very glorious, like flourished font. A lot of the letters don't match up. A lot of the flourishes don't quite match up. I don't know, this is sometimes boring stuff for people that don't care. That's okay. But I like when everything kind of has the right flow to it, if that makes sense. Oh, there's more questions. I'll go first. The guy that I paid $10 to be here.
Can you talk a little bit about what your... First of all, I have to say that I think you're way too humble.
Points for you.
Anybody who is not experienced with his work should really check out his portfolio because it's really fantastic. What you've seen here is just a tiny sampling of what he's capable of. So
I've worked with this guy before, and he's
now I
amazing
just
too.
earned my $10.
Yeah.
Second of all, I would like to hear you talk a little bit about what your experience with illustration and drawing was before you got into hand lettering, because I think one thing that has intimidated me about getting into it is this idea that, oh, well, I never like was a big drawer, and so like it's interesting what your background was with drawing before you got into this.
Nice. I'm maybe more relaxed now. This is where a salon setting. Good question. So those 30 years that I skipped of my background, that doesn't really matter. A lot of those years, I thought I was going to be the next big comic strip writer. I was going to be syndicated, and I was going to be so cool. I had these delusions of grandeur. I drew comic strips, and they sucked. They were like poorly drawn. Their ideas weren't good. But for 8 years, I like tried to make comic strips, and that didn't work out because they sucked. But at the same time, it taught me how to kind of like sit and keep going. And I mean, my drawing skills still kind of suck. My handwriting is pretty terrible. But I think is the feeling of like being able to sit down with a pencil and an eraser and just to like meditate for a while and to like get my head out of what's going on around me. It's lovely to do it. And then you can sit at cafes and you meet all sorts of amazing people because everyone's like, ew, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, hey, Bjork, what's up? Never happened, but I saw her at a cafe recently and I dreamed that it would happen. But yeah, it's like a good way to get yourself into a headspace that's like kind of meditative. And at the same time, I don't think you have to have any like professional illustrating skills whatsoever. So you're fine. Matthew. Also, used to share a studio with that guy. He's great.
So it's really beautiful to hear you talk about the process and these end result of kind of nihilism. But because you are so self-reflective, do you ever worry that people see him as purely nihilism? They miss kind of the journey that took you to find those things?
That's a great question. And yes, that's why I don't work that often with like clients. No, usually I feel like a lot of times there isn't room for that because the deadline is like probably in 2 days for whatever we're creating. And a lot of clients are like, yeah, it would have been great if we had a week to think about how this affects anybody or do actual research on this like scooter that has 2 wheels and you can move it around with your body and it's going to be the next big thing. But you know what? We're not going to ask people if they actually want that kind of thing. So there's like a lot of kind of brushing everything like under the carpet because of deadlines and then also budget. So it's hard, I think, for a lot of people to be able to see that as like a positive thing to like bring into a team. It's like, oh great, here's the person who's like gonna be thinking about stuff. Not that I think about stuff that much, but yeah, I feel like maybe there's a lot of reflection that I want to do about what's happening, but oftentimes there's just no time or bandwidth for other people to do the same thing because you all kind of have to be in the same place. And also good vibes only, bro. Gotta keep it chill. Can't do anything good without being good vibes. Does that answer your question? Or it floats around a bit.
I was thinking more of your personal hand lettering thing. So when people see on Instagram everything sucks, do you worry that they're going to miss that this is a counterpoint to...
Yeah, I'm guessing a lot don't see it because they're robots and they're not real humans that I pay for my followers. But I think if it does come off as it's too like nihilistic, that's okay because there are times, well, like I will wake up in the morning, I'll feel like depressed as hell. And like sometimes it's okay to like, for me to say that and like understand that people see that about me, which is okay. It's like everybody's depressed from time to time. And I just like to talk about it through my lettering, and hopefully that will, you know.
Yes, but you always do it in a very humorous way. I mean,
Another
the fact
part.
that it's so beautifully designed, and you say something that is totally the opposite of what it looks. It's like you're joking.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that humor is a necessary factor to deal with the horrible shit that is surrounding this world from time to time. Sometimes I get too mired in that stuff, and then I'll just joke about everything. But yeah, I think that having like a self-reflexive humor for me helps to deal with like the stuff that I can't deal with in general. But I hope that when people see my stuff and they see like humor to it, I hope it doesn't come off as like mean or snarky or like, well, I guess sometimes I feel mean and snarky. The fact that I don't have a dating blog pisses me off. But yeah, I hope people can at least get a sense of the humor behind it so it doesn't seem like it's just this dark black hole of somebody just like, oh, this person's just hates everything. It's like another Nietzsche. And I don't have that mustache yet. Oh, all the way back. I make a video and I use my iPhone always, except when I have Abigail to help with a fancy camera. She did the beer commercial. Thank you, Abigail. But I use my iPhone and I use iMovie. I think it's 08. I don't think you can use it on most computers anymore. But usually I'll see something that happens in the world and I'm like, oh God, I gotta make a video of this. I know, I'll use cardboard. And it makes me giggle a lot, but oftentimes other people don't giggle so much. But yes, it's all just, the process is iPhone and then putting just a ton of sound effects on everything. Because I guarantee you, if you saw those videos without sound, it would have just been the worst. It was just like, after 15 seconds, you'd be walking out that door and like, this guy is nuts. But yes, I really love making videos, and I do some music videos from time to time. And I hope to do some videos where I interview creatives, and I subsequently destroy whatever they're creating accidentally. So it might happen when I get a budget for it. And right behind you.
Just random. Is Sun Little the musician that was in that video?
Yeah, that was Sun Little. He's pretty damn good.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was funny because you said he's your friend.
Yeah, I grew up with that guy. If you guys haven't heard Sun Little again, I'm going to pitch his stuff. He's playing in New York with Leon Bridges on March 7th and 9th. But Son Little is he's one of the most fantastic soul musicians out there today, and he's so funny about his work and himself, and there'll be more videos with him. You can catch a couple more videos that I did for him on my website at Gatorade.com. No, whatever my website is, it's my name. But yeah, he's great. Anybody else?
Any more questions? Time to go?
Thank you guys so much. Oh my God.